What happens when television's most notorious critic meets Hollywood's most calculated host? What was supposed to be a routine promotional interview takes a shocking turn when Simon Cowell sits down with Jimmy Kimmel. The night begins with forced smiles and scripted banter, but within minutes, the studio atmosphere turns icy as tensions explode into one of the most volatile confrontations late-night television has ever seen. The studio lights blazed as Simon Cowell made his entrance to thunderous applause. His signature black t-shirt and confident stride immediately commanded attention. Jimmy Kimmel, flashing his familiar grin, offered what appeared to be a warm welcome, though industry insiders could sense something simmering beneath the surface. The audience had no idea they were about to witness television history. "Simon, great to have you back," Kimmel began, his voice carrying the late-night charm that made him a household name. Cowell settled into the guest chair with his trademark composure, but seemed to notice something the audience missed. "Thanks for having me, Jimmy," Cowell replied, his British accent cutting cleanly through the studio's carefully controlled atmosphere. "Though, I have to say, after some of the things I've been hearing backstage, I'm wondering if this invitation came with ulterior motives." The first crack appeared in Kimmel's polished fock-eye as his smile tightened almost imperceptibly. He had built his career on controlling every aspect of his show, from scripted jokes to tightly managed celebrity interactions. But Simon Cowell was no ordinary guest. He was known for saying what others wouldn't. "I'm not sure what you mean by that," Kimmel responded, still friendly, though an edge had crept into his tone. "We just wanted to talk about your new projects. Maybe have a little fun with the audience." Cowell leaned back, his piercing gaze fixed on Kimmel. The audience, still riding the wave of celebrity excitement, remained unaware they were watching two seasoned veterans engaged in what was quickly becoming a psychological chess match. "Fun, right?" Cowell said, his voice carrying the bite that had made him feared worldwide. "Is that what you call the little research project your producers have been running on my personal life? Because I'll tell you, Jimmy, some of the questions your team has been asking around town are quite interesting." The color drained from Kimmel's face as he realized his carefully planned ambush was being turned against him. For years, he had perfected the art of catching guests off guard with awkward revelations, all while maintaining the image of America's lovable late-night host. But Cowell had come prepared. "Simon, I think there's been some misunderstanding here," Kimmel said, his confidence slipping as he glanced toward his producers. "We always do our homework before interviews. That's just good television." "Good television." Cowell laughed sharply, without humor. "Is that what you call digging into someone's private business dealings? Contacting former partners and trying to manufacture controversy where none exists? Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks more like tabloid journalism dressed up as entertainment." Studio fell silent, except for the hum of cameras and the faint whispers of crew members who now realized they were capturing something far more explosive than expected. Kimmel's trademark confidence evaporated by the second as Cowell dismantled his carefully constructed persona. "Look, Simon," Kimmel said, his voice turning defensive in a way his audience rarely heard. "If certain topics make you uncomfortable, we can stick to safer ground. That's not a problem." Cowell wasn't finished. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing, and the temperature in the studio seemed to drop again. "The problem, Jimmy, isn't what you want to ask me. The problem is that you've built your entire career on making people uncomfortable while pretending to be their friend. And tonight, I think it's time someone returned the favor." The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Kimmel let out a nervous laugh that sounded hollow and forced. His usual quick wit had vanished as he struggled to regain control of a situation, slipping far beyond his carefully managed comfort zone. "Simon, I think you're being a little dramatic," Kimmel said, his voice betraying the first real signs of panic. "We're just trying to have a conversation. That's what talk shows are for, right?" Cowell's smile was razor-thin, completely lacking warmth. "A conversation. Is that what you call it when your producers spend weeks digging through someone's private life?" calling their business associates, and even contacting their children's schools? Because I call that something else entirely. The studio audience shifted uneasily in their seats. What had begun as standard celebrity banter was morphing into something far darker and far more personal. Camera operators subtly repositioned themselves, sensing they were capturing something extraordinary, while producers in the control room argued frantically over whether to cut to commercial. "I don't know what you're talking about," Kimmel protested, but the denial carried little weight. Sweat beaded on his forehead under the harsh studio lights, and his trademark confidence crumbled with every passing second. "Don't you?" Cowell's voice sliced through the tension. "Then perhaps you can explain why your research team contacted my son's headmaster, asking about his academic performance and whether there were any behavioral issues. Or maybe you can explain why they've been calling my business partners, fishing for stories about alleged failed ventures and financial trouble." The color drained completely from Kimmel's face. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air as he realized Cowell had not only uncovered his tactics, but had come ready to expose them on live television. The hunter had become the hunted, and everyone in the studio felt the shift in power. "Look, if our research team overstepped," Kimmel began weakly, "that wasn't my intention. Sometimes these things get out of hand." Out of hand. Cowell's voice rose for the first time, his composure finally cracking. "You targeted my family, Jimmy, my children, and you're talking about things getting out of hand as if it were an innocent mistake." The studio fell into a deathly silence. Even the camera operators seemed to stop breathing as they watched one of entertainment's most powerful figures dismantle a beloved late-night host's reputation in real time. This wasn't a celebrity disagreement. It was a public execution. Kimmel's hands trembled as he reached for his coffee mug, a desperate attempt to buy himself a moment to think. Cowell denied him even that. "You want to know what's really interesting, Jimmy?" Cowell continued, his voice now carrying the cold precision that had made him feared in boardrooms worldwide. "Your little research expedition uncovered some fascinating information, not about me, but about you." Kimmel's eyes widened with genuine fear. Whatever game he believed he was playing, he was rapidly learning that Cowell was operating on an entirely different level. The seasoned host who had embarrassed countless celebrities over the years was about to experience the other side of that power. "You see, when someone starts digging into your life," Cowell said, his smile growing increasingly predatory, "sometimes they discover others have been digging into theirs. And what I've learned about your behind-the-scenes behavior, your treatment of staff, and some of your more questionable business practices, well, it makes for very interesting reading." The audience sensed they were witnessing something unprecedented. This was no longer entertainment. This was warfare, and Simon Cowell had just revealed he held all the ammunition. Kimmel sat frozen in his chair, aware that his career might be hanging by a thread, yet powerless to stop what was coming. "You know what I find most fascinating about you, Jimmy?" Cowell continued, his voice now carrying the cold calculation of someone who had spent decades destroying careers with surgical precision. "You've convinced America that you're a lovable, harmless comedian, but the people who work for you tell a very different story." Kimmel tried to interrupt, but Cowell cut him off before he could speak. He raised a hand with effortless authority, and the gesture alone silenced the host of his own show. "Did you really think I would come here unprepared?" Cowell asked, his British accent turning each word into a carefully aimed dagger. "When you decided to target my family, you made this personal. And when things get personal with me, I don't just fight back, but I destroy." The studio lights seemed too dim as everyone in the building focused on the unfolding disaster. Camera operators zoomed in, capturing every bead of sweat on Kimmel's forehead, every nervous twitch as he grasped the scale of his miscalculation. This wasn't just a celebrity feud. This was a public execution, broadcast live to millions. Let's talk about Jennifer, shall we? Cowell said. Kimmel's face went white as a sheet. Your former assistant, who worked for you for 3 years before she mysteriously vanished from the industry altogether. A very talented young woman, from what I hear. A shame what happened to her career after she tried to report your inappropriate behavior. That's not you can't. Kimmel stammered, his carefully constructed public persona collapsing like a house of cards. His hands were visibly shaking now as he realized Cowell wasn't merely attacking his professional reputation. He was about to expose secrets that could destroy everything. Or perhaps we should discuss the NDAs. Cowell continued relentlessly, his voice never rising, yet somehow growing more terrifying with each word. Dozens of them, all signed by former employees who had the misfortune of seeing the real Jimmy Kimmel behind closed doors. The one who screams at interns, throws tantrums when things don't go his way, and uses his power to silence anyone who dares to speak up. Kimmel looked desperately toward his producers, silently begging them to cut to commercial, to end the nightmare before it went any further. But the cameras kept rolling, and Cowell showed no mercy. This was retribution precise and calculated, Dan. Everyone in the studio knew. They were watching a career being systematically demolished. The funniest part, Cowell said, his use of the word carrying no humor at all, is that you thought you could intimidate me. Me? Do you have any idea how many careers I've ended? How many people have tried to play games with Simon Cowell and lived to regret it? The silence in the studio was deafening. Even the audience seemed afraid to breathe as the moment grew into one of the most explosive in late-night television history. Kimmel sat motionless, his face a mask of terror and defeat, knowing every second of this destruction was being broadcast live. You want to know what really bothers me about people like you? Cowell pressed on, leaning forward like a predator closing in. You hide behind this facade of being America's sweetheart while abusing your power and destroying innocent lives. But you made one critical mistake tonight, Jimmy. Kimmel could barely whisper. What mistake? Cowell's smile was chilling as he delivered the blow. You forgot that I built my entire empire by being the person everyone else is too afraid to be. I don't hide behind fake smiles or scripted jokes. When I destroy someone, I do it honestly, openly, and completely. And right now, in front of your entire audience, I am destroying you. The words echoed through the studio like a death sentence. Kimmel sat utterly defeated, his career in ruins, his reputation shattered, his secrets exposed. But Cowell wasn't finished, and everyone in the building knew the worst was still coming. You know what the beautiful thing about truth is, Jimmy? Cowell said, his voice dropping to an almost menacing whisper. Once it's out there, you can't take it back, and the truth about you will follow you for the rest of your career. Kimmel finally found his voice, though it was barely more than a croak. Simon, please, we can work this out. We don't have to do this. Work this out. Cowell laughed sharply. The way you worked things out with all those employees you silenced. The way you worked things out when you targeted my children. No, Jimmy. This is exactly how we're doing this. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, many pulling out their phones, sensing they were witnessing something destined to go viral within hours. The cameras kept rolling, capturing television history, while producers frantically debated whether cutting to commercial would make things better or far worse. Cowell stood up from his chair with deliberate slowness, his movement commanding the attention of everyone in the building. His presence seemed to fill the entire studio as he looked down at the broken man who had once been America's beloved late-night host. The difference between you and me, Jimmy, is that I've never pretended to be anything other than what I am, Cowell said, his voice carrying the finality of a judge delivering a verdict. I'm ruthless, I'm honest, and when someone crosses me, I make sure they regret it. But you built your entire career on deception. Kimmel made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. The audience doesn't want to see this. This isn't what they came for. Cowell turned to face the studio audience directly, his commanding presence immediately capturing their full attention. Actually, I think they deserve to know exactly who they've been supporting all these years. Don't you? The audience remained silent, but their expressions had shifted from shock to something approaching understanding. They were beginning to see through the carefully constructed image that had fooled them for so long. Here's what's going to happen, Cowell announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who has spent decades making decisions that changed lives forever. I'm going to walk out of here, okay? And you're going to sit there and explain to your audience why everything I've said tonight is true. Because it is true, isn't it, Jimmy? Kimmel's silence was answer enough. His shoulders slumped in complete defeat as he realized there was no coming back from this moment. The career he had spent decades building was over. Destroyed in less than 30 minutes by someone who had played the game better than he ever could. I want you to remember this moment, Cowell continued, his tone now final. Remember it every time you think about using your position to hurt innocent people. Remember it every time you consider abusing your power. Because this is what happens when you mess with the wrong person. With that, Simon Cowell straightened his shirt, looked directly into the main camera, and delivered his parting shot. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed what happens when someone finally stands up to a bully. Good evening. The studio erupted as Cowell walked toward the exit with the confident stride of someone who had just won a war. Kimmel remained frozen in his chair, able to speak, unable to move, completely destroyed by his own arrogance and cruelty. The audience watched in stunned amazement as one of entertainment's most powerful figures simply walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of what had once been a career. As the studio doors closed behind Cowell, the full magnitude of what had just happened began to sink in. Social media exploded within minutes, clips of the confrontation spreading faster than wildfire. Kimmel's ratings plummeted overnight, and questions about his conduct as a host dominated entertainment news for weeks. The confrontation exposed the dark underbelly of late-night television and highlighted the importance of respect and professionalism in an industry built on entertainment. Simon Cowell had delivered the ultimate lesson in consequences, proving that even the most beloved public figures are not immune to justice when they cross the wrong person. The night Jimmy Kimmel's career died wasn't just about one man's downfall. It was about the moment when someone finally said enough was enough.